All right, good evening. Today is the 4th of July in the year 2012 AD, Independence Day. And of course everybody is celebrating it, but it's a kind of a hollow celebration. I have in my hand here the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States of America. This is the law of the land. Little book, only 57 pages long. And the entire American experience since 1776 has been based on this. And of course, what we find today is we have a hollowed out celebration, because this particular document is no longer adhered to. It is, as the Supreme Court emphasized this past Thursday, this no longer applies to anybody. When they ratified, so to speak, the American Health Act, so-called. And so the sad situation is that everybody's walking around going through the motions of celebrating the independence of the United States of America from the shackles of the British monarchy. And what has happened in the ensuing years, and you could probably mark the date of the beginning of the destruction of the United States of America as December the 24th, 1913. So we're coming up to the 100th anniversary of the beginning process of the destruction, where the nation state began its process of smashing itself to pieces. And the agencies that are responsible for this, ostensibly that is, are the secret brotherhoods. Now, this is the 15th episode of the Mobuku Chronicles, and we now get to the discussion and description of the third part of the strategy that I have delineated and described in great detail, of emancipating ourselves from the machinations of the secret brotherhoods. Now, the purpose of doing so is that the Threefold Commonwealth, as I am going to refer to it, is a necessity. It has to come into being, and it will come into being. But the question is, how is it going to come into being? That is the only question. Whether it's going to come into being through us taking in hand, in full consciousness, and arranging matters in such a fashion that the Threefold Commonwealth is actually implemented and put into place, or it comes about through calamity and catastrophe. Now, right now, I would hazard that it is not going to come about through conscious design, which is what it should happen. People should realize that the nation state has its day, and all the evidence is being presented today, and has for some time, indicates that the nation state is falling apart. I mean, we just have to look at all the evidence. I mean, what's happened recently, for instance, the LIBOR scandal. Okay, LIBOR, what LIBOR means? You may not even know it. Probably very few people do. But LIBOR is the London Interbank Overnight Rate. And it basically sets the interest rates, which all other interest rates, so to speak, work off of. And it's set by the banks in London. And what has transpired, and of course this has been known on certain websites for a long time, I mean at least 2 years, that this LIBOR rate has been manipulated in order to maintain the quote-unquote status quo. And what's happened is it's been sort of, how should we say, revealed, it's been exposed, and today there was questionings in Parliament of one of the bankers, and it's been revealed that the banks that were responsible for setting the LIBOR rate were working in collusion with the Bank of England, which is the central bank of England, and that the Fed was involved and this and that. So, and essentially, what James Sinclair said in his last writing on his website was that the rig is up, meaning that the rigging of markets is over. Now, essentially because of this expose that's going on, and it will become pretty much, a household word over the course of the next couple of years, this word LIBOR. People who otherwise would have no idea what this LIBOR is and would care less about it, they will get to know it. And it goes right to the heart of the entire Western and global economic, financial, banking system and the corruption therein. So now, the purpose of the Mobuku Chronicles is to just say, okay, we recognize what's going on and how do we respond, because by everyone implementing the strategy that I have delineated and in great detail over the course of the past 18 months, is to develop people who are going to be the forerunners of the Three Fold Commonwealth. Because now Steiner, again, it was one of those subjects in which he could not expound a great deal, because as I mentioned in the previous episode, Steiner had to go over a lot of ground that would otherwise have been covered by other initiates who were thwarted in so doing by the secret brotherhoods in one manner or another. And for other reasons too. I mean, for instance, Plato, he incarnated at the same time as Steiner, and Steiner met him, and Steiner knew he was the reincarnation of Plato, and he was a professor at some university. And Steiner says, well, the thing is that these great individualities, it doesn't necessarily follow the one incarnation is as, shall we say, significant as another. It depends on a bunch of factors, chief among which is the kind of body they incarnate in and the kind of education we receive once we've incarnated. So, and those are all, the kind of body we incarnate in depends on not only what we bring with us from our past life, but the kind of nourishment the mother takes in during the gestation period and the kind of life that the mother leads during the period of gestation, and that has a tremendous influence on the kind of body we have when we are born. That's our constitution. So it doesn't necessarily follow that every great individuality from the past, such as Plato, would necessarily have an incarnation which would exceed in terms of the influence the previous incarnation had. So there are various reasons why Steiner had to kind of, like, shall we say, play catch up and give to the world the information that the world needs in order to be able to not sink completely into the abyss of materialism. And the fact is that Steiner is he's not known. I mean, he's not widely known in general terms. And his work is of supreme importance. I mean, very exacting importance for everybody to take in and understand and study. So, in order to prepare you for the discussion on the Three Fold Commonwealth, we have to do a kind of like a historical survey, where we want to know where we are, where the human race is and the earth in terms of the overall, shall we say, schemata of human and earth development, spiritually speaking. Now we're in the fourth incarnation of the earth, and this is the earth proper. The previous three were called, in going in reverse order, going back to the last one was the moon incarnation, the prior one to that was the sun incarnation, and the prior one to that was the Saturn incarnation. Now, when the earth incarnated again, this fourth one, the current one, it went through a recapitulation of the first three at a higher state of development, and these are called epochs. And the first one is called the Polarian, and the second one is called the Hyperborean, and the third one is called the Lemurian, and the fourth one is called the Atlantean. And we are in the fifth one, the post-Atlantean epoch. And this one began approximately 12,000 BC with the end of the Atlantean civilization or epoch being marked by the worldwide catastrophe that we know as the flood. And this upheaval changed the entire makeup of the earth, so that the Atlantean continent disappeared under the Atlantic Ocean, and Africa and America and Europe and Australia and so forth took on the present configuration. And the first culture, of which there are 7 in each epoch, the first culture in this post-Atlantean epoch was the ancient Indian, which is prehistorical. And each of these cultures lasts approximately 2,160 years. And the second one was the Persian, third one was the Egyptian, Hebrew, Chaldean culture. The fourth was the Greco-Roman, and the fifth, which began approximately 1413 AD. I mean, none of these dates are cut and dried. They're just approximate. They're sort of transitioning. So, but 1413 is when the fifth